rather than singing a song or something to pass the time, let me just turn the program over to our presenter today, Dan Ryan, Riverside Healthcare. Dan, I'll let you introduce yourself as you wish, and I assume you want to run the slides, right?
Yes, I have the slides, so I can just take screen share. Let me see if I can do it.
Got it.
Right.
We're seeing the presenter view, rather. I mean, your
oh
view.
no. All right, hang on. Let's try it again.
Sounds like a dual monitor tango.
How about that?
Perfect. All right, it's all yours.
All right. Do you see my taskbar? I can see my taskbar. Oh well, let's not worry about that. It is what it is. All right, let's get started. First, just a little background on the title. Is we're planning this presentation with Bruce and Patrick, and I think one of them asked what I wanted to title it, and one catalog to rule them all came out. I'm not sure where. I might have seen that Amazon trailer for the new Lord of the Rings show. But anyway, Bruce replied and asked if data governance was the precious. And I thought about that a little bit, Bruce, and I think that actually a lack of data governance is the precious, because what is the precious? It's dangerous. It corrupts the hearts of men, and it has to be destroyed. So I think all of that fits better with a lack of data governance. So this is, I think, our partial journey to Mordor to destroy the lack of data governance at Riverside. I don't think we're there yet. We might be, I might have just gotten dragged off by a spider, I'm not sure. That will be my last Lord of the Rings reference for everybody who's cringing on the call. And to actually set this up, so OHSU did a presentation last time where they talked about their journey to developing a strategy around a single portal for governance and reporting, and where they were in the process. I think Brent Dukes did that as a very helpful presentation. And so I wanted to build off of that, because we have built that portal at Riverside, and we've actually made it an open source tool that's been available on GitHub for now a couple of years, and a few other Epic customers have adopted it as well. And so I thought that this would be a good opportunity to share the next step that we have taken in that journey, there and back again, last one, to to developing that portal and the success that we have had in that project. So let's see if I can. A little bit about Riverside. I just like to show this slide because it shows that we are indeed on the side of a river. That's the Kankakee River right there. Not all Riversides are positioned directly adjacent to a river like we are, so I think that makes us a little special amongst the many Riverside hospitals and health systems. Basic info, we're 300 approximately staff bed community hospital health system, about 12,000 annual inpatient admissions, 250,000 plus patient encounters. We have a full continuum with long-term care, inpatient rehab, 100 plus provider, I think it's actually 120 plus provider medical group at this point. We've been on Epic since 2016, and I think it was 2018, we actually went live on the Epic module for long-term care and home health. So we are fully invested in the entire Epic platform across our continuum. And this presentation isn't about master data management, but having everything on Epic does, I think, make master data management a lot easier for those of you trying to figure out that strategy. And then our analytics team, this is a 9-person team. It includes business intelligence developers, data engineers. Data engineer kind of crosses over between database, ETL, and then also web development, automation. We manage our own infrastructure, so we handle all of the ETL, both from Epic Clarity into Caboodle and other custom data sources. We have about 600 to 700 report requests a year. Actually, I think that number might be a little high, and it's related to what I'm presenting on. We've been able to push that number down a little bit, and we're primarily Microsoft plus Tableau. So all of our infrastructure for databases is SQL Server, with starting to dip our toes into Postgres as well to take advantage of open source. We use a lot of SSRS, analysis services, SSIS, and then we do custom development primarily with C#.NET, also some Python, and we have a little bit of legacy R code that we still take advantage of, although we're not doing active development in that platform. So background on the project, I think this is typical experience from other places I've talked to. After we went live on Epic, we found end users struggling to understand data. They couldn't find content. If they did find content, particularly reports and dashboards, they didn't necessarily understand it. Led to in a few sort of critical cases, end users misinterpreting and then actually taking misinterpreted data and submitting it to regulatory agencies, which caused some problems, as you can imagine. And so that was a wake-up call that we needed a better way to organize our content, organize our data, govern, if you will, so that end users could really know what they were working with. They'd be able to find what they need and they would understand it, or at least they couldn't say that they didn't have the information available to them to understand it. In the several years following our Epic go live, the analytics team really dealt with overwhelming demand. We were able to expand our team a little bit, but that struggle between maintenance and new development on existing content, matching end users up to what they needed, and for our team, being able to understand what we'd already created. That was a huge issue for us. There's a lot of anecdotal, I think I built a report like that already. Let me see if I can find it, but just poor organization for the end product that we'd already produced for end users that made it more difficult for us to leverage the work that we'd already done. And so we kind of, coming out of this experience, decided we wanted to really focus on SSRS and SQL development. That's where we saw the most user satisfaction, especially amongst leadership and what you might classify as business or clinical operations users, director, executive level, and enhance the user experience around that. So what did that user experience look like? So if a user is trying to find a report, in the old state, there were, I think I have 5 or 6 libraries in this deck of slides. There were 5, 6 plus places that you could formally go to, and then there was all sorts of informal back channel spreadsheets, digging through email, all sorts of stuff. We had the Epic report library, which depending on your perspective is either sadly or in my opinion welcome. I'm looking forward to it being deprecated with Hyperdrive. So for us, the Epic report library has about a 14-month lifespan remaining. So the Epic report library, you could get Reporting Workbench. We did import SSRS reports in there, so you could get SSRS reports as well. Did not contain radar dashboards or components. For that, you had to go to the analytics catalog. So even within the Epic platform, you kind of had these 2 different libraries that had different content, and people being much more comfortable with this one than that one, creating more confusion as to where they can find content. The analytics catalog also leveraged a different documentation template than the report library. So there wasn't one centralized place to document all of your content. Like I said, we were heavy users of SSRS. So while we did make those reports available in the Epic report library, we also made them available to end users in the SSRS portal. That's just the default portal that's available when you stand up SSRS and SQL Server. So this was a third place to look for content. Again, different documentation here than you would find in the Epic report library, because those reports would be documented in the description field in the report library as well. Then we added Tableau. So then we had a Tableau website, just another place to look for information. And then we've been growing for a while as users of Slicer Dicer. And so I put catalog in quotes here because really it's better now that this stuff is available in the analytics catalog, but still this is the main way that users try and find content within Slicer Dicer just by default, because it's built in. Really challenging tool for finding and understanding the content that's available in Slicer Dicer. So just kind of a disorganized mess, and no one place for anybody, report users or developers, to find content. Can you imagine if you're looking for something related to observation, it can be it's really in all of those different catalogs. And so if you're trying to find the best report for your needs, you have to go to all those different places. And our end users just did not know how to do that. They might have one or two places that they were comfortable going to, and beyond that, they were just blind to the existence of other types of tools that were available in these other libraries. And then, to make matters worse, and this is somewhat self-inflicted, but I also think that the tools themselves contributed to this outcome. The documentation was just not great within these different libraries. And so there wasn't clear explanations of what the report was doing. It wasn't front and center either for end users. So they had to kind of dig to really understand what the report was doing. And it was inconsistent. It was inconsistent across platforms. So because of all of those challenges with our different library options, poor integration, poor documentation, I haven't mentioned, but search is not great in any one of those platforms. I think Tableau and SSRS probably do it the best. The challenge with the Epic report library, for instance, is that you didn't have the ability to search for things that you didn't have access to. And our reporting security build, and really, it followed from our Epic security build, wasn't necessarily consistent across roles and didn't always make sure that a person had every possible tool available for them to find that could benefit them. And then poor accessibility. We have a lot of users that don't go directly into Epic. And so, you kind of had your non-Epic users were more focused on the web-based catalogs, whereas your Epic users were heavy into the Epic native catalog. So we had, a set of bad options. None of them were going to be able to be the single place to go for content. And so we decided that we would just roll our own. And so that is what Atlas is. This is a single catalog. It's available inside and outside of Epic. It indexes Workbench reports, including the components of Workbench reports, so columns and extensions with the relationships mapped between those content types, Radar dashboards, Radar components, SSRS reports, Tableau dashboards, Slicer Dicer models and sessions, Crystal reports, which thankfully, again, are going away for us soon. I'm not going to miss that one any more than I'll miss the Epic report library. Radar metrics, also built out an enterprise data glossary with term definitions that we could associate with all that content. And then finally, I think one of the most valuable parts of the tool is user data. So we were able to go to all those different sources, whether it's Epic native content, Crystal reports, SSRS reports, Tableau, all of those platforms actually do a really good job of storing user metadata, runs, subscriptions, so you can better understand what content your users are really taking advantage of. And so that's been something that we could go to all of these different places, build an ETL out to retrieve, and then put in a single catalog, a single database, so you could understand across all of these different platforms how users are using your reporting content. So that is a brief introduction. And from there, I'm actually just gonna jump straight into the tool. And I will walk you guys through how it works and how we use it at Riverside. So this is the Atlas portal. I land on a home page. I have favorited reports here. I'm able to favorite any report in the catalog. We have a sharing feature built in, so if other users have shared content with me, I can see it in a queue right here. I can place things in folders if I'm interested. I can search within my favorites if I want. But the core of the application is the content search. So I can come out here, for instance, I can search for, well, I gotta spell it right. I can search for census, for instance, and now I get a list of reports across content types, across platforms related to census. So here, for instance, is an SSRS report. This is a dashboard component. Here's another dashboard component, so quite a few. This is a radar dashboard. And what's really nice is I have filters over here that let me then narrow down my searches if I'm looking for a specific content type. So in this case, I'm actually looking for a radar dashboard. So let me click that. And I can see the daily census report is the first radar dashboard that pops up, and that's the one that I'm actually interested in. So I'll click in there, and now we can take a look at the documentation template page for report content within the Atlas catalog. So one of the things you'll notice, first of all, is the certification tag. So we have a number of certification tags that you can apply to content. You can apply them automatically based on criteria that's actually customizable within the application. And you can add a description. You have a hover over to describe what that tag means. This analytics reviewed tag, this one really needs to go through another round of certification. This is to indicate that this has gone through code review. It's been tested, but it's actually outside of its maintenance window, which is another feature within the catalog that you can provide a maintenance window to all your content. And so that if something is certified, so this was certified at some point last year, if you get outside of that certification maintenance window, then the certification tag will degrade. And so this has gone from certified to reviewed. I've got screenshots here. These don't come in automatically via the ETL. You have to add them, but you can add as many screenshots as you want to help users recognize and understand what content they're dealing with. And then we have documentation fields available. So you can grab, you can have your developer add a description, you can spell out key assumptions. We also ETL in the description from the system. And I should say, by the way the catalog works is we have ETL set up to go to Clarity, Caboodle. We have some direct pulls out of Cache. We hit our SSRS, 2 different SSRS servers. We hit our Tableau database and we hit our BOE server to pull in all of this content metadata automatically. So you don't have to go in and add your own content to Atlas. It comes in automatically, and then we've configured the ETL so that we can look at the usage data for that content to determine if it displays by default in search. If you actually run this ETL, I think we have probably 60,000 things that you could call a report within across all of our systems, but we only display about 10,000 pieces of content in the library because most of that stuff is it could be deprecated, low use, Epic release content that we haven't implemented yet, private reports. We do pull in private reports, but we don't display them by default in reports. So you get that all for free, and any user can search for any piece of content, and they can actually search for that hidden content too. They just have to go through a few extra steps to change the filters so that hidden content becomes visible in search. So it gives you a view of basically your entire ecosystem of reporting tools all in one place, and you can search through all of them, and there's a lot of relevant metadata that you can take a look at once you find that content you're interested in. It's great for troubleshooting. So down here, this is a radar dashboard. Down here we have terms that have been associated with this particular dashboard, and terms can be added manually, but a nice feature for Epic-based content is we leverage the metric framework. So Epic has its, I guess it's not a glossary, but they have standard definitions for, I think there's literally thousands of them for key metrics that you can deploy across a variety of reporting tools within Epic. And so for term definitions, I can create a term, I can add it manually to content, but if I associate that term, and this is actually associated with a radar metric, if I associate that term with a radar metric, everywhere that metric is used, it gets added to that content in Atlas automatically. So it's really for your Epic content, at least. Unfortunately, that's not relevant for other platforms, but for Epic content, you kind of get free assignment of terms to content based on the Epic's metric framework. And so for instance, this is clickable, so I can jump into this definition of length of stay. I can see the kind of layman definition and then a more technical definition. Now this is built by a developer. This doesn't come in automatically. And then I can see all sorts of different types of linked content that deploy this term. So all of this content has been either manually associated with this term or automatically associated through the metric framework. So these are terms that are associated with this particular dashboard. This is metadata that comes directly, mostly from the system. And then also we have a documentation engine, so you can add other things like information about how fragile the report is. It pulls in report tags from Epic. So if you employ tags in the analytics catalog, those will come over automatically. You can get the Epic ID, which is very useful because you can search by this. This is indexed and search. So if I want to try and find the Atlas entry for this particular dashboard, I can just search for that and it'll come up. We have the maintenance schedule right here that drives the certification. Pull in things like report groups. So a lot of metadata right there. And since this is a radar dashboard, Epic in particular, but other reporting tools as well, often have related pieces of content. So in Epic, every dashboard is going to have usually multiple radar components on it. And each one of those radar components is really its own standalone report to a certain extent that can be deployed on multiple dashboards. And within those radar components, you can have data that comes from Reporting Workbench reports, you can have data that comes from metrics. And so there's even further relationships down the hierarchy for these related components. So for instance, I'll just grab this length of stay because I know it has some metrics associated with it. I can look at this length of stay component. It's on the daily census report. I got a nice screenshot of it, description from the developer. And then I can see the terms associated with this piece of content. So I can better understand how it's deployed throughout the organization. So if I see this term, you're like, okay, that term is deployed here. I can also click back here and now I can see, oh, it's being used in all these other places as well. So you can keep track of how you're using your definitions across your entire report library. And then this is what's really cool. I can see all the metrics down here within the relationships section that drive this particular dashboard. And something I really like is we pull via ETL, this comes in automatically, we pull the query for this particular metric. So let's say an executive calls me up, they've got a question about the daily census report. I can pop it open in Atlas. I can drill down to the specific component that they're trying to understand. I can share with them a term definition, or if they have a more specific question or think there might be a problem, I can immediately jump into the metric and take a look at the metric query and quickly identify any potential problem that might be associated with that query, and either assure them that it's actually working correctly, clarify how the metric works, or potentially make some changes and correct the metric right there. So it really streamlines end user support. That's one of the most common things that we use Atlas for, is to very quickly answer questions about reports throughout our system, because nobody knows how every report works. There's thousands of them, but this kind of makes it seem like we do. And then also, so this is a metric page, so I can see all of the components this metric is deployed on. It's only actually deployed on this one radar component. But if I jump back to the component, I can also see in the reports that include this report section, all of the dashboards that contain this particular component. And this was something that was always, for us at least, you can do it through Workbench, and we had a spreadsheet for a while that ran a Clarity query that let us get to this information too. But it was always sort of a challenge, whether you're troubleshooting a component or potentially dealing with something that needed to be deprecated, to know and easily find out all the places that something's deployed. So this allows us to do it very quickly. And we use this a lot in upgrades in particular. If you've gone through, if you're an Epic customer and you use Nova Notes and gone through that upgrade process, you'll get a note that says, oh, this metric change or this component change, and you want to know, well, what's actually the impact of that change? Do I need to, set up some training? Who do I need to communicate about these changes? And so you can quickly in Atlas look up that component or that metric and see all of the places that it's used. And oftentimes for us, at least our experience is, we'll get a note about a metric change, and then we'll look it up, and we don't actually use it anywhere. So it's, what if I do nothing? For you Nova users, that makes it very easy to close out notes and focus on the stuff that's really going to have an impact on our end users. So jumping back to the daily census report. So I've got all my components here, and this is a huge dashboard. So I've got a lot of different dashboard components. Down here, I have my maintenance logs. This is what drives the certification tag, among other things. Usage has an impact as well, but this maintenance log, completing maintenance logs within the scheduled time period will keep pieces of content certified. And if they're not maintained within the designated time period, then the certification tag will degrade to automatically communicate to end users that, hey, maybe this definition is possibly growing a little bit stale, and you might need to be a little more wary about using data from this particular piece of content. Over here, I've got a couple of other options. So I think the most important is the usage profile. So I can pop this open, and I can see the run analytics. So I can see who all the users are that are running the report in the last 12 months. I can see the usage of the report over time. And actually what we see here is we started emailing this out as a PDF. And so I think the in-Epic usage has declined a little bit for this dashboard, but still very heavily used. I can see who's favorited it. Unfortunately, even though I mentioned we send it out as a PDF, we haven't set up the ETL yet to pick up email subscriptions for Radar dashboards. So we don't have the subscription metadata yet. That's something we're working on, but I can see the two people who favorited it, and I can see a log of the individual report runs and who ran it most recently and who's run it most often. And from here, or from the Run Analytics page, I can actually drill further. And so I can take a look at, for instance, this is our Chief Nursing Officer. I can click right there, or maybe I can't. I'll get to her. And it just discovered a bug. I can click right there and I can jump to the user profile of this particular user. And now I can see all of her report runs. This is her report run log for the last 12 months, sorted by what she's run the most. I can see the, for SSRS, the content that she's subscribed to, how often it goes to her, when it was last sent, and if it's sent successfully. And I can also actually see, because this ETL comes from the SSR server, I can see even her disabled subscriptions, which is very convenient because, you know, our chief nursing officer will sometimes call me up and she might say, hey, I used to get this report in my email for behavioral health census. Can I get that back? I don't know what happened to it. It fell off. And at some point, she probably asked me to turn it off. But either way, I can say, yeah, sure, that's great. I can find it right here. I'm in Atlas. I can actually just click into that report. This is a legacy report. It's not documented, which is why it has a high risk tag, which is probably why it was disabled. I can even look at the runs. This report hasn't actually been run in the last year. So in the case of this request, I would probably create a ticket to revalidate this report, create documentation, and then set up the subscription for our CNO. But if I didn't want to do that, I could also, let's see, I could open up the report editor, and actually I won't do that, but I could open up the report editor and launch into that report. I can, let me see if I can find one that actually, yeah, here we go. I can click a manage link, and then I can go and configure the subscription right from the SSRS portal. So in this case, this subscription, I can enable it. So let me show you something else we've set up to make it easier, because even though we really narrow down the content that is visible by default to end users, there's still just kind of the nature of the beast. There's a lot of stuff out there. And so in order to make it easier for end users to find content on their own, we also created something called collections. So let's say I'm at CNO again, and I'm searching for information about observation. I can search observation and I get all sorts of reporting content down here related to observation, cross-platform. But I also have at the top of my results this observation reporting tools collection. And I can click right into that. And now I have a whole bunch of reports that have been curated by the analytics team that we decided these are our core reports for keeping track of what's going on in observation. So it gives end users a nice starting point and narrows things down for them. And like this is an SSRS report, so I can click right into the documentation, take a look at a screenshot. I can look at the associated terms, read developer description. Another cool thing with SSRS is that I have the queries again available to me right there. And since this is a web-based report, I can actually click run right there. And if I have access, this is an important caveat, all of the access to reports is not set by Atlas. It's still determined within the particular reporting platform that the report is run on. So this just gives people a view of the content, but it won't give them access to the content unless reporting security has been set up for them to access that specific piece of content. And now, so those are kind of the base features. I can also, here, I'll show this real quick. I can also share. So I can create a share and send that to myself. And then if I go back home, I will have that report showed up and shared with me. We're also turning this on for email. So kind of a cool, as I mentioned, this is an open source project. So kind of a cool feature of open source is that you have other organizations and users working on the project as well. And for us, one of our big partners is University of Colorado Health, and they've implemented Atlas. I think they've been live for about a year now, and they on their own implemented email sharing. They also actually came up with the concept of collection. So by being able to collaborate, we've really been able to make the tool even better than we would be able to on our own. So that's been a really nice partnership. So that's the content on the web, anything that's web-based. Tableau, we actually have analysis services cubes. That can all be found and launched if the user has access directly from the web. But in my opinion, the real killer feature as an Epic shop is that, I'm gonna try and stretch my words out here so that Epic can start up.
Hey, Dan, would you want to show the editor while it's opening?
Oh, yeah.
The edit report documentation.
Yeah, so real quickly, just to give you an idea of how editing works, you can step through the different pieces of the documentation template, and these text boxes actually can render Markdown, so you can use Markdown to format your content. You can see the metadata that's automatically populated, and also metadata that you can update. So if you want to add an owner, add a requester, we use GitLab for version control. So we associate the piece of just SSRS report with the Git repo. Organizational value always cracks me up because after much discussion, we created this spectrum of organizational value that goes from critical at its highest down to high, medium, high, and medium. Because if it's low value, then we probably shouldn't be using it anyway. And I will say that sometimes we flag stuff low value as medium just because certain people think it's very important. But it's kind of a funny political way of organizing this. But all of this metadata, all of these values that can be populated are configurable within the application. So other users can create a low value or extremely low value tag as well. It's all customizable. You can also add content to collections right here. So if I wanted to add this, I don't, but if I wanted to add it to the observation collection, I could, just like that. Got a couple of flags on here. You can upload your images. This will just launch into a folder. You can add your maintenance logs. If there's service requests associated with the report, you can add the original report request. You can add, if there's maintenance requests, you can add those as well. And then you can add a maintenance log right here. Again, this is customizable, but we went with something very simple where when you're doing maintenance on a report, like ultimately you're going to decide that the report is either good as it is with no changes, or maybe it needs some changes, updates, and so you would flag that, or it's the end of life for this particular report and you can recommend retire, and then this actually goes to a queue within Atlas for us to retire reports. And then you can add notes right there. And then you can click complete right there, or you can cancel out of it if you don't want to make any of those changes. Now I will drag Epic over here and show that integration. So what we did with Atlas is we created an activity and added a tab to open the website and make it available as a default view for all of our users. So if they want to get to Atlas and search for reports, they can see it right up here. By the way, speaking of customization, not everybody loves the emoji. I personally do, but that's not even unanimous on our team. The logo, including whatever you choose to put here. It's also completely customizable. It's all configurable within the app setup. So now I have Atlas within Epic. So let's go back to that daily census report dashboard. And I can launch into the documentation, and I can very quickly launch right into the report. Also, depending on my level of access, again, this is not determined in the application, but if I do have rights within Epic to edit a report, I can click right there and launch me directly into the report editor. That's also useful for troubleshooting. Sometimes there's configuration buried within those menus that's affecting the user experience. And it's easier to figure out by just popping open the editor than digging through the Atlas documentation. So that integration works for a number of content types. Let's see. It's not going to work for radar components because you can't launch a radar component on its own. But if you find a radar component that contains what you need, you can drill into Atlas, jump down to see the reports that include this report, and then launch into any of those. We'll launch the daily census report again, just because I know it doesn't contain any PHI. I can also see the usage on a radar component. And what's cool about the usage on a radar component is this is going to count views of any dashboard that the component it's on. So it's not just limited to a single dashboard view, because you could have a component that's actually more critical than any single dashboard because you're using it everywhere. So this gives you the full view of how your users are looking at the component. Jump back. Let me take a look at a reporting workbench report. I'm not going to launch this. And something we always do when we add the screenshots is make sure we obscure any PHI. So I won't launch this report. You just have to trust me that this does actually launch in Reporting Workbench. But this is what a Reporting Workbench entry looks like. One of the things we retrieve in the ETL are the parameters. It's kind of, you kind of have to be an expert to understand some of these value mappings, but for developers, it's still helpful to see that information. You can see the report groups, but it was really cool for me anyway, worked with Reporting Workbench for a long time, is that you can see all of the columns on that particular Workbench report, and you can dig into the documentation for the column and see all the reports that deploy that column. So again, upgrades, especially, this is hugely helpful. Let's say you have a column that's being replaced or the calculations changed, you want to fully understand the impact of the change of that column, you can do that right here. And we also have the relationship mapped from the column to the extension that populates the data in that column. So it's kind of epic, deep inside baseball, but you can see the documentation and even the M code for that particular extension. And then all of the, in this case, just all of the columns that employ that extension. We want to get CER rules eventually and get all those relationships maps too. We're just not there yet in terms of building out our ETL. But again, this comes in automatically. This isn't something that had to be manually added. Just go back. Can show quickly also. So search by default is not just content types, it's also users. So I can look up particular users within search and go to their user profile and see, their run information. This might take a second because I have a lot of runs. I can see their history within Atlas. I can see a little bit of analytics about how they're using the application. I can see subscriptions, just SSRS right now. And we also do ETL, LDAP ETL. So we get all of our distribution groups, get your Epic user roles, report groups, user types. I mean, it's kind of an overwhelming list, but if you ever wanted kind of one place where you could see all of the different role and user group assignments that impact a particular user's access to content, this is a nice place to do it. And what else is cool is, let's see if I can find a decent one. This one's probably going to be queues, but these groups also have their own profiles. So I can look at this particular group, which is a leadership group. I can see all the people in this group, and I can actually see, this might take a second to load. I can see all the reports that they're running in this group as well. A second to load there. I might have overdid it with that particular group, but for like a small team, it is really useful. We use this for our finance department all the time. Are there any questions? I see a ton of stuff in chat, so I've just been going, but let me see if I can.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I was having audio problems earlier, so I apologize. So awesome presentation. Thank you so much. You're getting a lot of help from Christopher and Scott. They're answering questions as things go along. So I think most of the questions that are in chat, at least from what I've seen so much, have been answered through chat as well. So what I'd like to do, if it's all right with you, is just open it up to people out there on the call and see if anybody's got any additional questions to Dan or to anybody on his team. And then Bruce has got a quick announcement. I've got a quick thing, and we'll let everybody go maybe a little early. So any questions out there from anybody?
Hey, Dan, this is Brent Dukes from OHSU.
Hey, Brent, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Good stuff here. Thanks for taking the time to share this with all of us. One of the challenges we're quickly recognizing as we build our own, analytics marketplace here is this concept of once you start showing people all of these great assets that have been built over time, they quickly want to get access to them. And at OHSU, we have multiple ways to get access to reports because we have many different reporting environments. Can you quickly just review with us how people get access to something once they request? Like, what does the process look like? What are is there a single kind of intake process people use, or what does that look like there?
I swear you're not a plant, but that was just about the perfect question to ask. So actually, each one of these documentation entries has this little request access link right here. You can choose your leader and just fire off request access. And behind the scenes, so we just have this set up using the API for our ticketing system, which is Manage Engine. Behind the scenes, it's doing an API call, creating a ticket in the system with that director that you associated as part of a template. You have to have a director or a vice president associated with an access request. So it has that associated leader in the system. We can work a queue within our ticketing system, get approval from the director, and then within, whether it's in Epic or SSRS or Tableau or whatever, set up the access for that particular user based on that approval. So yeah, it's
Okay.
we streamlined it so all the access requests can come in directly through Atlas.
Cool. That's great to see. That's what we're considering as well, because right now we point people to, like I said, many different forms, approaches to get access to stuff depending on where it lives. So I think we're going down the same path. Thank you.
Great question. Any other questions out there?
Dan, this is Bruce. Can you talk a little bit about the bringing Atlas live, the project itself of bringing Atlas up, how long it took, how many people were involved, how you're managing enhancements over time?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good question. So as I showed on the slide, we have a 9-person analytics team that includes really 4 people that don't work on Atlas at all. They're dedicated BI developers, and then a ETL engineer who is focused on maintaining our infrastructure, managing ETL, keeping those processes running smoothly, setting up database maintenance plans, all that sort of fun stuff. And then we have a core of data engineers that, I mean, we kind of span roles. So I would say that kind of data engineering, and I do some of it too, is maybe 2.5 FTEs. And from that pool of resources, we developed and supported Atlas. I mean, we've been working on this project really since 2019. It evolved over from our internal reporting tools that we use to track a lot of this metadata. So, I mean, actually, from that perspective, you could say we built a lot of the ETL queries even earlier than that. So it was a very iterative, evolutionary process to get to this point. This wasn't something we decided to build overnight. But I mean, I guess you could say that we have one full-time FTE dedicated to developing, supporting, and enhancing Atlas. But really, he works on a lot of other stuff, and other folks on the team step in to support and work on Atlas as well, especially the ETL. So it's sort of a tough question to answer. We kind of, to a certain extent, like working on Atlas is cool, and people like to do it. And so that there seems to be a lot of enthusiasm to pick up projects here or there and work on it. But I'd like overall, it's not a huge development team, and we're supporting other custom applications and working on those as well. So hopefully that answers your question.
Thanks.
Hey, Dan, Brent again. Can you quickly speak to then how your analytics team integrates or collaborates with a DGO team, or is the analytics team kind of an extension of your data governance office?
If we have a data governance office, it's us, which in certain ways makes things easier, right? Because we can just make design decisions on our own. I think we're more advanced technologically than we are in terms of structure. We're actually starting down that road this year, but we had a leadership shakeup, and so we're sort of back to the drawing board in terms of how we want to formalize our data governance organization. So I guess our design focus has been to, as much as possible, build out a framework to limit the need for that broader data governance structure, to set it up on a platter within Atlas. So, okay, here's some terms, we've defined them for you, we associated content with it. We have our approval process in place, but we don't have a committee right now doing that sort of work. So we, like, as much as possible, I guess the goal is to try and automate a lot of the tedious stuff within data governance by building out this ETL and automation and dumping it all into a single portal where you have all that information available to you.
Okay, thank you.
Dan, this is Jocelyn from Children's, and so on that approval process, I had to step away. Is there an approval process that is set up or capable of being set up in this? So like if a term, let's just talk about a business term, a manual term that isn't being pulled from the metrics repository at Epic, it's a brand new term, business glossary term, we want to put it in, or somebody even wants to suggest that it gets put in. And so we want to make sure that it goes through an approval process or review and approval process, right? So is that, so again, I apologize if you already covered this, but is that here? Is that process available in here for the term to be reviewed?
Yeah, that is available. And it's a good question because I didn't really spend much time on that. So you can, for instance, looking here. Oops, it's the wrong button. There is approval, and there's not much to it at the moment, and we would probably develop it out more, but like I said, the technology is kind of ahead of our. So sometimes it's easier to tell a computer what to do than tell a person what to do, and so the technology is quite a bit ahead of our internal processes. So at one point we had a committee in place that was reviewing and approving terms, but just through I mean, it's been a chaotic couple of years, especially for us in terms of leadership. And so that process hasn't really come together, but it is there. And I think, as we kind of grow in that capacity, we'll probably add more metadata around that approval. So that's not just flipping a box, yes or no, but that's where we're at right now.
So you could theoretically restrict that approval to whoever may be on a committee, an established committee, so that they're the only ones that A, see that capability, and B, have that capability to change it.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, and that's actually, so
Cool.
this is how these are all security points within the application. So
Got it.
approved terms is actually a security point. So
Okay,
by default, most end users won't have the ability to approve a term. So it is restricted, but I'd like to have more documentation around that approval.
Mhm.
Maybe approving individual timestamp, that sort of stuff.
Cool. Okay, thanks.
Hey, Dan, I had a few questions for you.
Sure.
First of all, just wondering, your ticketing that you're doing for the requested access, is that going into another tool like Jira or eServices?
That is going into Manage Engine. So let me,
Okay,
let's see
just
if I can-
wondering.
Yeah, so it's creating the ticket using the API. And let's see if I can. Yeah, so like this is the one that I just entered. So it's just a very basic template. It says I would like access to this report. It includes the Atlas link, so I can just go right to that report and see what they're asking for. And it has an associated director. So I just put myself on there, who is the person that actually approves that request, and then we can set it up and close the ticket.
Cool, thank you. And wondering, following up on like the terms and who approvers are on those, I wonder, does this support like a stewardship structure so that people are approving the appropriate terms for their, product area or knowledge area? Anything like that?
Yeah, it's something we could definitely do. So if you look at, let's see, let me, oh, no, this is a report. So if you look at this metadata, a lot of these fields can actually be customized. So if, and Christopher, correct me if I'm going too far in what's possible, but you could create a custom field that was the steward, and then document the steward there. And I think you can actually, can we modify these names as well? I think you could do that too.
Yes, well, then you can.
Yeah, and one of the things we're working on is making it easier to extend the metadata. So we want to have just some dedicated fields within the database that are purely available for us or anyone else to customize and add customized metadata directly in those fields. And then you would set that up within a config file, and then they would appear within the editor and on the content.
Cool, thank you. And then just one last question. You said you're importing the Epic data using the scripts. Are you guys doing that at a certain cadence, like monthly or?
No, I mean, depending on the content type, we're doing it either daily or a few times a day. So
Oh, okay.
anything that's clarity based is happening daily because it's only updated daily. And then our SSRS reports, we're always kind of messing with the cadence. I think we're at 4 times a day now. So if someone builds a new SSRS report in the morning, it's available by noon for them to go into Atlas and document it.
Great.
Let me see. Another thing I didn't show, let me show this real quick, is slicer dicer integration. So we have slicer dicer integration. We index slicer dicer models and sessions. So I can search for a slicer dicer session or model, and I can launch right into it. So there I am in slicer dicer. We also created, drop that filter. If someone just searches for slicer, we have several collections that we've created. So revenue cycle, patient data that contain our kind of starter slicer dicer models. So this is like our recommended vetted slicer dicer models so that folks can, if they're interested in using slicer dicer for a specific application, they want to look at different denials, tools, accounts, etc., they can just jump right into it from Atlas. And so that really corresponded to a big increase in our slicer dicer usage is when we made it available this way, because folks were really struggling to figure out how to get to slicer dicer, and then they were using that built-in catalog that's in slicer dicer and really having a hard time finding what they needed and what was relevant. And so this has documentation associated with it, so you can actually better understand what the model's doing.
Yeah, I can see how that would be fantastic for users. We have the same problem here. I just wanted to ask about the SSRS stuff. We do not have that embedded in Epic's an Epic's report catalog, but that's where you're getting the SSRS report definitions from Epic?
No,
or
no. We have 2 SSRS servers, and we go directly to those databases. So we have SSIS packages that it's all like Microsoft, Epic, Tableau, Crystal, not surprisingly, is a little more tricky. But those vendors do a really good job within their platforms of storing and making that user and usage metadata available. And so for SSRS, it's on the same database that's on your SSRS server. You can hit that report server database and get all of that information out of there. So that's where we're going. We're going directly to the source because that's ultimately where all those reports are being run.
Very cool. I'm wondering, are those scripts included with the Epic zip that was on the I think it's on the user web or in the data
Yes.
handbook?
Yeah, so there is the whole ETL package, including all the Epic native content, is in the report repository data handbook. You can just search for Atlas there. You might have to check user developed for it to show up. And I'll send out links to all of that stuff. And then on GitHub, we have the ETL just for the non-Epic stuff. Epic asked us not to put the Epic native Clarity and Caboodle queries out on the public internet. They're pretty protective of that information, but they were nice enough to host it on the report repository for us. So it's available for any Epic customer out there.
Would you be kind enough to share the Git project name of that outside Epic stuff in GitHub? Because I'm super interested in looking at that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually down here in my slides.
I'm sorry, I missed that.
Oh no, I haven't shown the slide yet, so
Okay.
you didn't miss anything. I mean, I include the link to the ETL in the data handbook as well.
Okay, great, perfect. Thank you.
Hey, Dan, do you put any, oh, sorry, go ahead. I was going to say, do you put anything on the reporting side to essentially indicate that if somebody's looking at a report and they don't yet know about Atlas, that it's like the report is documented in Atlas? Is there any direct link from the report back to the catalog?
Is this Brent again?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're like, you're asking all of my canned questions. Let me see. I gotta find, this is sort of tricky because I gotta find an SSRS report that,
These are all the things that we're thinking about internally, even as of this morning, as we're, building our own concept of this
So-
at our institution. So that's why it's,
yeah, I don't want to show any PHI, so I probably won't launch into it, but let me just show you in the screenshot. So we have, it's harder in Epic Native. You don't have, and I've talked to Epic about this, including the analytics catalog. You don't have a place where you can put a URL. But for
Yep.
SSRS reports, our standard process for building content is you start with this template that has a header. And part of that header is this learn more about this report in Atlas link. So if you click that, that will take you to the documentation entry within Atlas. And this is a good practice in general for anybody that uses SSRS or really any other platform that allows you to do this, because this will include a basic description, and then it captures the parameters that the particular user ran the report for, which is very helpful if you ever have anybody email you a spreadsheet that was a download of a report that they ran, maybe 18 months ago, and they're like, where can I get this again? It's like you got all of this stuff already available to you, so you can see exactly what they're doing. Get the link to the Atlas content, and so it makes it very easy. If they can't figure that out themselves, it makes it very easy, at least for me or someone on my team, to steer them in the right direction.
excellent. Thank you.
So I'm taking silence. Go ahead, Patrick.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in as well. So we are about 10 minutes after the hour. So I think questions are kind of fizzling out here, but Dan, thank you so much for sharing this with me a couple of months ago and stepping up and agreeing to present here today. I think there's a lot of interested parties out there, and what you've built here is pretty creative and very solid. So thank you for the time. Thank you to your team for jumping in and answering all the questions in the background. It's been awesome to watch it as it's unfolding here.
Yeah, and I'll say, like, to everybody, if you have interest in the project, if this is something you're interested in standing up, reach out to me, and we're happy to talk to you. We're happy to work with you. We really want to grow the project and build a community of users and contributors, because I think it makes it more useful and valuable to everyone involved.
Excellent. So just to give Bruce a lead in here, Dan, if you're not planning to attend the HITA conference, please try and convince your leadership to come on down, because I'm sure a lot of people would love to meet you there.
Yeah, I'm working on it. We'll have
All right, keep plugging. Let me know if you need some strong arm tactics. We can work on that.
Okay.
So Bruce, if you want to make your plug for the conference, that would be awesome.
It's not so much the conference, because I did that early on, but there's some late breaking news from our EPIC special interest group, since we talked a lot about EPIC here today. They will be meeting on Tuesday from noon to 1 Eastern time with a couple of things on the agenda, single sign-on with Hyperdrive and the third-party BI tool, kind of an open discussion, and then a presentation on how to select a reporting tool from the palette or third party. Peter Ivers will be, who runs that group, will be making that presentation. I will keep an eye out for an email probably tomorrow morning with the details, but I wanted to throw that out there. Peter, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add.
Just a little bit of history of that group. I think it'll be of interest to any of the EPIC clients. We span off a couple of years ago from Hidware to focus on, because it was very vendor related, to focus on Microsoft use of tools with EPIC. We're kind of coming back into the fold now with HDAA, and so this particular topic of how to choose, it's really driven by EPIC's push for palette use and deprecation of Crystal reports. How do you decide when it's right to use those tools versus Tableau or Power BI. So I think it'll be an interesting topic. And thanks for Dan, who asked the question today and kind of was a catalyst for putting that on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm excited for that presentation. You got some good content.
And just to say, I posted in the chat, Atlas, we've been looking at it for a good long time now, and we're very impressed, and Hopkins are interested in implementing it probably next calendar year. We're starting to get our ducks lined up in terms of the governance people we would need to pull it off. But really great work there.
Thanks, Pete.
Excellent.
So, yeah, that's all I had, Patrick. So over to you.
Okay. So shameless plug for the conference again. So anybody who's interested, please join us there. It's the best conference I've ever been to when it comes to analytics or healthcare. The atmosphere of sharing and open dialogue that happens between healthcare providers is off the charts. It's a really great conference. You'll make a lot of contacts. So if you can join us, that'd be awesome. Other than that, the only other question or comment I'd like to add, other than, again, thank you, Dan, for your time and expertise here. If anybody out there has something that they'd like to share, we're always interested in talking to folks. Dan reached out to Bruce a few months back. He and I sat on a call for about an hour. He went through this with me, and I was like, you've got to share this with people. So that's what led to this presentation. We will probably not have a SIG presentation in October with the conference immediately following. So we'll probably target something maybe for December. So if anybody out there has some content that you'd like to share, a topic you'd be interested in us putting together a roundtable or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, or you can reach out to Bruce. You can reach us on the website, in the SIG group, however you want to reach us. I'm going to put my email address here in the chat. If I could type, it would be in there. So anybody wants to reach out to me, please do. I'm sure everybody knows how to get a hold of Bruce as well. And with that said, unless anybody has any other questions or anything else to bring forward, I think we're good for today. And we'll let everybody out about 15 minutes early.
Pardon, Patrick, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I cannot find a link to you said you had like an Epic group meeting next week.
Yeah, the link's not out yet. It was late breaking news. I will send out an email probably first thing in the morning with the details and put it on our website as well.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you, Bruce.
Cool. Anything else, anybody? All right, well, thank you so much. It was fantastic attendance today. We had over 100 people at one point. Again, thanks, Dan, you and your team, and everybody have a great afternoon.
All right. Thanks, Patrick. Thanks, Bruce.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks.
Yep, bye now.